How do we find flow in life? Flow really is a state of deep absorption in reality. It's a state of one-pointed awareness where our attention is effortlessly engaged in this exploration of something that we are deeply curious and passionate about. And it's a state of consciousness that many artists, musicians, creatives seek to cultivate in their life. And yet, because it is such a deeply pleasurable experience and it's a deeply creative experience, when we're in the flow state, we are, well, we can stay hyper focused on a particular thing for a very long period of time. So I suppose in our sort of modern, capitalist society where productivity is something to be desired, we see the flow state as something that is economically and productively viable. But on a parallel point, the flow state is a deeply spiritually significant state of consciousness. Because, of course, it is a state of meditative absorption, a kind of samadhi, as the Buddhists would put it, a state of sort of non-dual absorption where there ceases to be this apparent boundary between the doer and the thing that has been done. You can think of it this way: it's like you're writing with a pen and you're not really rigidly conscious of being this person writing down ideas. You're not a noun, you're really the verb of the writing, the ideas just spilling out onto the page. And I think writing is a good analogy to really comprehend what the flow state is. It's one activity which I consistently achieve flow in, because I treat writing as really a meditative exercise in terms of unveiling the thoughts that are simmering on the surface of my awareness and engaging in a kind of conversation with myself within. And from that conversation, discovering all sorts of interesting new ideas and associations, which is a deeply creative and enriching and interesting experience. In a similar way, what I'm doing right now, where I'm speaking to a camera, is another form of, I suppose, journaling with my speech, because there is no premeditation, there is only the creation, the emergence of sound. I'm thinking as I'm speaking. And whenever I step out of that process of speaking, whenever I step out of that flow and I become hyper aware of being a person creating something, I think of myself as, Ryan speaking. That thought, that shift of awareness away from the process of expression, in fact, disrupts the sense of flow. Because it takes us into our ego and our sense of self. The flow state is inherently a kind of form of ego dissolution, because we cease to be really conscious of ourself and all our problems or our egoic considerations, our anxieties, agitations. We're just silently and peacefully there and aware of the activity. And there's this deep feeling that you're swimming in a kind of ocean and there are no resistance within that ocean. There's no currents pushing against you. You're really swimming with the currents. And And this ties into, of course, the Taoist notion of wu wei, effortless action, this idea of going with the flow in life. And I suppose that's almost become a spiritual cliche. But what it is really pointing to is this stage in the mastery of any kind of skill, whereby you reach a point of competence and expertise where you can just do stuff without a deep, anxious and agitated awareness of what you're doing. See, when you're learning a musical instrument, the beginning initial stages really absorb your attention, and you make lots of errors and mistakes, and it's very frustrating. But eventually, with many hours, you reach a point of a degree of mastery where you can play and you're not hyper conscious of, let's say, with a guitar where you're putting your fingers in a particular posture of your fingers and how you're strumming. You're not conscious of that because that all becomes automatic and natural to you. And when you reach that point of expertise, you can really lose yourself in the music. And you lose yourself in it, and you're just flowing with it. And there's a sense of joy, there's a sense of deep meaning. And you're just there surfing with it. Now, with these sort of videos, I've made many of them, and over time, I've improved my ability to speak, to articulate spontaneously, and it's reached to the point where with recording these videos, I can consistently enter into that kind of flow state. I can enter into that discovery with the viewer, and it's a deeply enriching and creatively satisfying experience. Now, of course, in my current state, I'm slightly tired, which is, I suppose, creating a few more obstacles than are usually present. But regardless, I still am able to witness that spot, that zone. And, I want to talk a little bit about how do we get to that zone? And when we are in that zone, how do we maintain it without slipping out of it? What's most fundamentally important is our degree of control of our attention and our capacity to not slip into distraction, our ability to create a controlled sort of environment that in fact allows us to enter into flow, to enter into deep states of prolonged focus. Now, deep focus, as it is in fact called by some writers like Cal Newport, is a state of consciousness which is increasingly rare, with our attention spans becoming much more smaller, with, of course, the rise of smartphones and social media feeds, short form content. Deep focus is something very, very rare. And consequently, if you wish to become, let's say, a rare form of individual who is capable of doing things which most people cannot do because they do not have the attention span for it, training your attention will allow you to enter into deep forms of flow states which 99% of humanity simply cannot access by virtue of their neural and psychological architecture. So I guess if you want to distinguish yourself from other people, training your attention, training your mind's ability to focus on one point for a long period of time, to deal with the restlessness of resisting distraction. If you can tolerate the discomfort of that, then you are going to be a formidable person. And you'll be a person who is capable of creating things that others people can't create. Now, of course, once we train our attention so that we can focus on a particular object and avoid slipping into distraction or slipping into daydream or idleness, when we can focus our attention on one object and keep it balanced there, it then raises the question of what do we focus our attention on? What things in reality ought we to attend to? Because of course, in our decision to attend to reality, it raises a subtle moral question with regards to, well, what things do we focus and emphasize, and what things do we ignore? Because of course, our attention, it's discriminatory. It has to prioritize some things and, of course, erase and ignore and whatever other stuff. So in our life, we have to basically come to awareness of what we truly value, what truly grips us, what are we passionate about, what do we deem as a worthwhile use of our time. For myself, in my own life, I suppose in my routine of being, I have certain rituals of study, music, spending time with loved ones, such as my wife sitting behind me. There's an array of things in reality which I grant the sacred importance of my attention, and I try not to waste my attention frivolously, because when I waste my attention frivolously, I'm wasting my energy. And my energy is the most scarce and important thing to myself. And what this means is that I don't spend time dwelling or ruminating on things that are unproductive, not important. I consume myself in the things which are important to me, such as, certain understanding the nature of reality, certain philosophical and spiritual related topics, things that really ignite my curiosity about life. It's a deep question. What are we to value? And because, of course, we're all different, we're all constituted differently. For you, what you deem most valuable, what the things that make you feel most alive will be different. And we have to discover what that is. And when we discover that thing which makes us feel most alive, then we have to stay close to it. And that's a Rumi quote, the Sufi mystic. We have to stay most alive, most close to the things which make us feel most alive, because the alternative is living a life that is boring and stale, and a life which does not facilitate and emphasize our spiritual maturity and realization in life. And I think when we contemplate long and hard enough, I think self-realization is the ultimate goal, the ultimate end game of all of this. The deepened awareness of the patterns within, how you yourself are a pattern in reality, various patterns around you, understanding all of that, comprehending it, not just on an intellectual, conceptual basis, but also on a deeply experiential basis. That's the fundamental goal of my content, whatever you can call it that, the things I talk about. The goal of that is a articulation and expression of my own realization in an attempt to trigger and spark certain realizations in you. As a kind of a ping